Well, you see, that's the whole point, is the word lie needs to be defined. Sometimes not telling the truth, all of the truth, is your moral obligation. And you have a moral obligation to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth at all times to anyone who asks you. You would say, that's not in the Bible. The moral thing to do is for me not to tell you. You ain't getting nothing out of me. Those issues relating to whether you have a moral obligation to tell the whole truth at all times to everyone, that needs to be answered by pointing out you don't. You do not owe them the truth. And see, that's another fallacy. People run around thinking life is just, and they run around thinking you owe the truth to everyone. You don't. That's what the Bible teaches.
That was from Morey's available audio tape from the REF, catalog number J54.
If someone tells you ahead of time that they don't believe that it's wrong to lie, can you believe them for anything they say after that? If someone tells you they believe it's all right to lie if they get in a pinch, how can you believe them anyway? At any time.
But then we learned he never paid you back $3,000.
Yeah, I was always being told they were low on cash, they needed funding and help, and
so it's just an interesting point.
Okay, because he had all that money and then didn't pay back the debt for the other book. Okay, well,
Shazam.
Okay, well, we're back to the agreement of the parties situation then. We've got Humphrey Perez acting as a representative for Robert Morey and Ann Morey in negotiation. We're simply trying to get some of our money back. They don't want to pay us our money back. We get a lawyer. We freeze their assets at our home. I simply tell them you can't get your stuff until we get this resolved. You're not coming down here picking it up, and then we hope that you're going to pay us back someday. We're going to try to get this resolved, and that's what happened. Basically, that we got into a situation where Humphrey Perez, acting on Morey's behalf, negotiated with us on this agreement of the parties, which Gary, you said it was kind of a rough negotiation. We had a lot of weird things happen in that thing. It was a telephone conference when we were actually setting up a lot of the details with Mr. Morey, Ann Morey, and Humphrey Perez on the phone, and then you and me were on the phone. Sometimes I'd go on my other line at my house and talk to the lawyer, our lawyer. What do we do next? And then come back in here and go like that. But the long and the short of it is, this is the agreement that was signed between the Moreys and ourselves.
That was after much negotiation because they had originally stuck in a lot of detrimental language in this contract.
Oh, really?
Right. Like saying that we had stolen money, the $3,000.
So this is from the very beginning.
Right. The original contract that Humphrey Perez sent down for us to sign had in there the $3,000 that we had stolen is to be repaid as part of the debt retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's actually what was said. And of course, I eliminated that language in there, but there was a lot of stuff like that in there. But
all kinds of accusations from the very beginning.
Right.
Even while we were negotiating with them over the phone, Ann Morey kept calling us crooks,
right,
and accusing us of all kinds of things.
Right. This is from the day one. It was just incredible. So, envision about 2 or 3 days of very intense negotiations where constant insults and threats are just being thrown at you. It was not a very pleasant experience.
Well, even before this negotiation, Humphrey Perez had threatened to come down and have me thrown in jail.
Right, and he had threatened me with criminal charges, and he was coming down to file charges. And
right, so we've received
trying to negotiate with somebody like that is not very fun.
And so the last person we'd want who's threatening us with criminal acts and throwing us in jail and things that would be a man like this to be an arbitrator.
That's right, because he had already made up his mind, sounded like to me.
Okay, well anyway, so we've got this agreement of the parties. It's all signed. It mentions the $7,000 here that they're going to pay us $10,000 up front, $5,000 in 90 days after an independent auditor checks out all the records. You can see right there it says $7,000 by check to be paid this week, $3,000 which is now in Larry and Gary Wessels' control and is therefore deemed paid. Larry and Gary Wessels acknowledge receipt of same by signing this agreement.
And it should be understood that control, since REF assets were in Larry Wessels' house, that's what that really means. It's the control, all REF assets were in the control of Larry Wessels from the very start. It was in his house. So that language might seem a little misleading if you don't understand the arrangement REF and Larry Wessels had.
So they came down, they sent 2 of their representatives, they gave us a check for $7,000, and I guess we ought to explain how this $3,000 is here. On May the 12th, 1994, when I called Morey on the phone and told him we got to get this debt thing resolved, and the conversation went a long time, and I was going to have to eventually leave the REF. I hadn't resigned officially or anything at that point. I think later in the day, Humphrey Perez called me on my answer machine. I didn't talk to him that day, but I got the message on the answer machine, and I immediately go, uh-oh, when Humphrey Perez calls, that means trouble, from the way I understood it, from other things he had been doing in the past, in my own experience. So I counseled with some other people and went down to the REF bank account because I was a signee on the account, and this is the account that is deemed the secret bank account, and withdrew $3,000. I had full authority to manage the money in the Texas bank account, and I put it in the REF petty cash account. And the reason I did that is I knew Morey could not get it in the petty cash account. So it was still in the REF's possession, but in a way where Morey could not do something quickly and grab the money by having it wired out of the bank, because I believe Morey had access to the REF bank account, which he now, of course, claims to be a secret bank account. So if I'd known he couldn't get it, I would have left it there, but I thought he could get it because obviously, and we'll explain all this, how the secret bank account is maybe not so secret. But anyway, so this $3,000 is placed for safekeeping. It was never taken in possession by me. It's simply put in the REF petty cash account, which was authorized by Morey and his board of directors. We have letters to that effect. And it stayed there pending what would happen on these negotiations. So that's why this $3,000 is here. They couldn't get their hands on the $3,000, but they agreed to pay us $10,000, so that's when the $3,000 was officially turned over to us. It was never stolen or anything of that nature, but of course that was their claim. Right. Okay, and then through here they say they're going to have an auditor. Go ahead. What
makes them interesting is that how would they know the $3,000 wasn't in the bank account if it was so secret? Because they were claiming this is a secret banking account.
Well, that's what we're going to get into when we get into these bank account things. Here they know with these mail outs.
Here they know right here that the $3,000 was taken out of the Franklin Federal Bank account, which they later claimed a secret. And how would they know it's here?
So, as we go into the agreement, I don't want to go into all the details. Documents, copies of these records are on file, but you can see down here there's a point. On any item of expense which is deemed questionable by REF and its independent auditor, Larry and Gary Wessels will be given full written disclosure and supporting documentation on the specific question amount, the method of accounting, and the reason for the specific item and determination made. So if they have any question about anything that's gone on with our REF bank accounts or whatever, they will, we will be given, that's Gary and myself, full written disclosure and supporting documentation of the specific question expense. Well, they've never done it.
No, they never provided us with anything.
There's no record of that as of yet.
Here they promised to give us some written documentation of any discrepancies that they find in the records, and they never provide anything to us.
Next, we see on the agreement of the parties that were signed, it says, REF's independent auditor will be completed in 90 serial days after the signing of this agreement, or the audit will be set aside with prejudice.